it's Philippa at 4D Human Being, and welcome to the third video in our series of how we can cope in a curveball, how we can deal with a crisis. And today we are talking about adaptability. How can we adapt when things suddenly change so dramatically? So when we think about adaptability, we can immediately reference Darwin, because he definitely suggests that it's not the survival of the fittest, but the survival of the most adaptable. And of course, all of us are adaptable. All of us have adapted as we've grown up and our circumstances have changed and we've gone into different jobs, or we've met somebody new, or suddenly something happens in our lives. We know that we can adapt. And also there can be a reluctance that at the same time as being able to shift and adapt, many of us also kind of like certainty and solidity. So we're often holding that paradox, and it can feel really tempting when a kind of curveball or crisis hits to hold on to something that feels really solid and certain, hold on to the way things were, the way that we always did things. And that can be useful, and of course that can also really hold us back and make us frustrated when the only way forward, really, personally and professionally, is to adapt. So we're going to talk about 4 things around the importance of adaptability today. We're going to talk about perception, and by that we mean mindset. We're going to talk about possibility, so how can we actually shift and think about a tool that's going to open up possibilities as opposed to looking at what's not possible when things change like this. We're going to look at the personal, so your personal life and how we can be adaptable there, and also your professional life. So firstly, thinking about perception. We like to talk about the improviser mindset. Now, many years ago, I was an actor. Now, actors have scripts, and that's great. You learn your lines, the story's clear, we know what's coming, we know what we're doing, we know who we are and who we're talking to and where the whole story is going and where it ends. But of course, life isn't really like that. We don't have a pre-written script. And goodness, at times like this, we are really, really reminded of that. When something kind of comes crashing in on us like this and everything changes, and even the kind of script that we'd sort of written for ourselves, that I think life's going to look a bit like this, I can see the future rolling out, I've got that holiday booked, I've got that work trip booked, I know what I'm doing every week, I've got that Pilates class, or that meeting with friends, and suddenly all of that script has just gone. Now, as an actor, you think, well, everybody must be fine to be an improviser, but actually even quite a lot of actors don't like improvising because it's such a different mindset. Because as I said, an actor has a script. Whereas the improviser mindset really is opening up to full adaptability, really embracing curveballs coming in. Because the thing about improvising, of course, is you go on stage, you have an audience, you're going to make up a story, but you've got no script. But there are rules to improvisation to help us, and I want to offer some of those today to help us be more adaptable when suddenly our kind of script, our solidity has gone. Because what improvisers really love is something unexpected coming in that they can then build from. It's learning to not be frightened of that, learning that you have the resources, that you can actually build and say yes to things and make something different happen. And I did a TEDx talk in 2018, which you can check out on YouTube, which really looked at the power of the improviser mindset for how we can show up in difficulty and how we can show up in crisis or loss or change. That yes, we have to accept the reality of the situation. Yes, these are the facts as they stand. And what can we then offer? How can we then build? And improvisers really talk about building and accepting on offers. So we might not have an offer, if you like, at the moment. So if we think about an offer as an event, or a kind of an offering up that a colleague might give us, or a statement, or in this case, a pandemic. I mean, just a horrific offering, if you like. We might not want it, but from a position of an improviser mindset, from a position of adaptability, we'll accept it and we'll try to build from there. So that's the mindset that we're really looking at. Not, I don't want this, this is problematic. Yes, we might go through that stage. The adaptable mindset says, okay, what now? So the second thing we want to talk about is possibility. So we've looked a little bit at the mindset that we're interested in around adaptability. And around possibility, the cornerstone of the adaptable mindset, the cornerstone of the improvising mindset is yes and. So when improvisers get an offer, there might be an instinct of, oh my goodness, that is not what I was expecting. But what they don't say is no or yes but. They learn again and again, rehearsing and rehearsing and practicing to change the system's response to yes and. I'll take that and I'll build on it. So how can we use this in everyday life? If you think about meetings at work, if you think about times in your home life where there's blocks, where someone says, I don't want that. That's not going to work for me. Yes, but that's not how I usually do things. How can we help them shift that mindset and say yes and? And it might even be that we say no or yes, but. So yes, but really is a block as well. And how can we take our yes, but to a yes and? So asking ourselves the question of what if, yes and, yes so. What if we try something different? So really watch out for the but, because there's a defense in there that we want things to stay the same because it's scary for them to change. And actually it becomes very difficult and unsustainable to keep just wanting things to stay the same, because they can't now. We have to keep moving. So how can we say yes and? How can we adapt? What is possible? So let's look at this from our third position, which is our personal life. So if we think about being at home, now we're working at home, a lot of us. So how can we do things differently? How can we let go of some of the rules that we've given ourselves? So there'll be things that you did before, that maybe you had some time in the day that was just yours. Maybe you have a certain routine that you always had, whether you were out at work or at home with your children or, walking the dog. You had your way of doing things. That's how life was. I like the bath mat to be hung up on the side of the bath. But what if now, the more that we cling on to those rules, but this is how it should be, this is how my house should run, this is how my life should be, that holiday should happen, I paid for it, that actually trying to hold on to those rules and those certainties are causing us pain. So in our personal life, how can we start to let go of some of the rules? Yes and, what if the bath mat stays on the floor all day? Yes and, what if we have lunch at different times, all of us? Yes and, what if I do this business meeting just sitting on my bed with my laptop? Yes and, what if I take that private call in my car? Yes and, what if we have a picnic indoors one day to try to recreate at least the idea that we might be able to go outside and do something different? Yes and, yes and, yes and. I think the pub quiz is just such a wonderful example of yes anding. I can't go to a pub quiz. Yes and, what if we do one online? I just think those are going to come thick and fast now. We're going to see more and more people yes anding. What can we do though? I'm having a drink online with a friend tonight and I can't wait. I haven't spoken to her in ages and that feels like a real yes and to me. We're not going to miss out on each other. We're going to see each other. So the last one is professionally. So when we think about professionally adapting, we need to think about how and what. So when we think about professionally how your life has changed, it's firstly the how. So many of you are not going into a place of work or into an office or out to see clients. Many of us now are at home. So we need to think about how we're doing that. And of course, that's around technology, that's around making WhatsApp groups or creating video calls. That also might be, different innovative ways of working, hooking up with different people, because now actually that's really easy. We can do much more international work, or maybe we can hook up with projects with people that we wouldn't normally be in the same office with and wouldn't think to hook up with as much, because usually we spend time with those people in our office. Or maybe it's how can we have lunch in a different way? Maybe we can still have lunch together. Maybe we never had lunch together, but now we can do that online together. So how we do things differently. Do we organise our meetings in a different way? Do we have a little game before the online meeting? How can we do things differently? How can we adapt? And then, of course, it's the what. So we have to think also innovatively about what we offer as a service or a product, because we might not be able to offer the same thing. So we've got to be very creative and adaptable around what our offer is now as a business. Now, for some businesses, maybe nothing has changed, but for some, they will have changed dramatically. So as an example, we've got Dyson now about to design and manufacture ventilators. That's a very big pivot, a very quick adaptation to what's needed out there. And that is such a good question. What skills do I have and what's needed out there? And how can I pivot and adapt really, really quickly? And that's why we're making this video series. What can we do? How can we adapt very quickly? I had a boiler breakdown this morning and I couldn't get a serviceman, of course, out to my property. But guess what? He could fix it through a FaceTime call. So some of these adaptations that we now know actually might well change how we work in the future, because now, rather than paying perhaps for a day or a half day call out, actually we might say, can we have a FaceTime call just to see if you can see what it is, and there's a switch or something that's broken that you can help us fix. So some of these adaptations that we are going to create now will carry on into the future and will change the way that we work and live. So there's also something potentially exciting here. There's opportunities that we will innovate around, both for ourselves personally and also professionally. You know, we're going to change how we live and how we work together. And some of that will be really, really positive. So I'm going to leave you with those 4 things to think about: that perception, that mindset around the improviser, the what if, the possibility, saying yes to something, and then the personal, how can you be adaptable in your home life, in your personal life, and finally your professional life. How can you do things differently? How can you communicate and connect and do meetings differently? And also, what is your offering now? How can you creatively pivot very quickly on what you can put out there in the world that's needed? So you are adaptable, you have it in you, you've done it all your life. Breathe into it and know that you can yes and what's happening right now. You can find out more about us at www.4dhumanbeing. We've got podcasts, videos, articles, all kind of things to support you. We're going to be doing everything we can to adapt and to try to support all of you during this very difficult time. And in the meantime, we wish you and your loved ones happiness, health and safety over the coming weeks. As ever, we'll be thinking about you. Do take care.